All right, if you're prepping for a ServiceNow technical interview, you know there's that one question that's pretty much guaranteed to pop up. It really is the heart of how the platform works, and you absolutely have to nail it. So today, we are going to tackle that beast head on.
And this is it. This is the question. For just about any scenario an interviewer can throw at you, your very first decision is going to be this. Does the logic run on the user's browser, client side, or does it run on the server? If you get this right, trust me, you're already halfway to a fantastic answer.
So let's think of this as our own little interview gauntlet. We're going to walk through all the most common scenarios, we'll break them down, and I'll give you the logic you need to really impress any hiring manager out there. Okay, let's dive in. At its core, ServiceNow development is really a tale of two logics. You've got client side and you've got server side. One controls what the user actually sees and does in real time, right in their browser. The other enforces the system's rules and keeps the data clean behind the scenes. Let's make this super simple. Here is the absolute best way to think about it, the waiter versus chef analogy. Your client's script, that's the waiter. They're right there at the table with the user, taking their order, maybe pointing out a special, giving that immediate feedback. But the business role, that's the chef, back in the kitchen. The user never sees the chef, right? But the chef is following the recipe to the letter, enforcing the rules of the kitchen and actually making the meal. One is all about the user experience, and the other is all about the system's process. So let's kick off round one of our interview gauntlet. We are starting with the waiter, the client-side scripts. These are the things that happen right in the user's browser to make everything feel smooth and dynamic. Okay, so the interviewer says, when a user sets an incident category to hardware, you have to make the subcategory field mandatory. How do you do it? This is a classic client-side task. And why? Because it needs to happen instantly, right on the user's screen. The second they change that value, bam, the form reacts. That is a job for an OnChange client script, using gform.setMandatory. Easy.
All right, next question. If a user selects priority 1 critical, how do you pop up a message to remind them to fill out the impact details? See the pattern here? It's all about immediate feedback. You want to guide the user while they're filling out the form. You're being that helpful waiter, and gform.addInfoMessage is the perfect tool for the job in, you guessed it, an OnChange script.
Now for an efficiency question. When the category is set to network, I want you to automatically populate the assignment group with network support. What's the goal here? We're trying to save the user a click and stop them from making a mistake. It's a simple, helpful automation that happens right in front of their eyes. So it's a client-side thing. A simple OnChange script using gform.setValue makes the user's life just a little bit easier. Now the interviewer wants to test your knowledge of user context. They ask, how would you hide the cost field from everyone except admin users? This has to happen the very second the form loads. The system needs to know who the user is and then adjust the form specifically for them. This is a perfect use case for an OnLoad client script, where you check the user's role with g_user.hasRole and then just hide the field if they don't have it. Okay, final question for round one. How do you stop a user from submitting a form if the short description is totally empty? Now, this is crucial. You want to catch this mistake before it ever even thinks about hitting the database. This is your last line of defense on the client side. An OnSubmit client script checks the field's value, and if it's empty, you just return false, and that stops the submission dead in its tracks. All right, you have absolutely mastered the front of house. Now let's head into the kitchen for round two. We're talking about business rules now. This is the powerful server-side logic that makes sure your data is clean and your processes are automated no matter how that data gets there. So here's your first server-side challenge. When a work note gets added to an incident task, how do you copy that same note up to the parent incident? See, this has nothing to do with the user's screen. This is all about keeping related records in sync in the background. It needs a glide record query to go find that parent record and update it. This is a perfect job for an after-update business rule. Let's try a more complex one. When an incident task is closed, you need to check if it's the last open task for that incident. If it is, automatically resolve the parent incident. Whoa, this means you have to query multiple records, all the other tasks, just to make a decision. That kind of heavy lifting is always done on the server. An after-update business rule can look for other open tasks, and if it finds none, it goes ahead and updates the parent. Let's talk about security.
How do you stop anyone who isn't an admin from deleting an incident? This is a hard, fast rule. It's not a friendly suggestion on a form. This is a gatekeeper action that the system must enforce. The answer? A before-delete business rule. It checks the user's role with gs.hasRole, and if they don't have the right one, you use the incredibly powerful current.setAbort action to just stop the deletion cold.
Okay, a real classic process automation question. Whenever an incident gets assigned to the database team, how do you make absolutely sure that the priority and state are set correctly? This is all about enforcing your company's standard procedure every single time without fail. A before-update business rule is your tool here. It actually intercepts the change, sets the values you need on the current record, and then lets it proceed to the database. It's proactive, not reactive.
Last one for this round, and it's a good one. How do you prevent a closed incident from ever being modified or reopened? This is about enforcing a really rigid workflow. To do this, you need to know what the state of the record was before this update even started, and that's exactly what the previous object is for. A before-update business rule can check if previous.state was closed, and if it was, boom, abort the action. This is just a brilliant example of how the server protects the integrity of a process.
And you've made it through the gauntlet. Fantastic. Now for maybe the most important part, the debrief. Let's take everything we've covered and boil it down into a winning strategy that'll make these concepts really stick. Now, what's really important to understand is the order of operations. This is so crucial. First, your client scripts run right in the browser. But sometimes the client script, our waiter, needs to ask the chef a really quick question without the user having to submit their whole order. That's where Glide Ajax comes in. It's this optional call that lets the browser get live info from the server without a full page reload. It's only after the user hits submit and the OnSubmit scripts say OK that the server gets involved with the business rules, first the before rules, then the database action, and finally the after rules. Knowing that flow is absolutely key.
So here are your final pro tips, your big takeaways. First, know your APIs cold. Gform for the form, Guser for the user. On the server side, Glide Record and GS are your best friends. Second, really master the different business rule types. And third, and this is the big one, always be ready to explain why you chose one over the other. Is it about user experience, data integrity, automating a process? Explaining the why, that's what separates a good answer from a great one.
So we've covered the waiter and the chef, the browser and the server. We've seen how they each have their own jobs. But real mastery happens when you can make them work together, in harmony.
So I'll leave you with this final challenge. Can you think of a scenario where you need that immediate feedback on the user's screen, but you also need some really complex validation or data crunching on the server before the record is saved? How would you make the waiter and the chef coordinate to deliver that perfect experience? That right there is the kind of thinking that's going to land you the job.